It had been 11 days since all hell had broken loose on my street. 11 days since I had to bury my two neighbors and two biggest allies. 11 days since I was concussed and injured in the fight with the Marauders. 11 days since Washington, D.C. was vaporized. 11 days since I had stepped outside for fear of nuclear fallout. We had sealed up all the doors, windows, and ventilation in preparation of fallout. 11 days since the last emergency alert broadcast. We were located very close to the areas that would be affected. We took no chances and had been holed up for the past 11 days. Cooped up like chickens was more like it. It was now July 30th, and truthfully, if we didn't make a concerted effort to keep track of the days, I'd have no idea. I was fully recovered from both the concussion and the leg injury. My ham radio was dead. Died 2 days ago. Being sealed off inside, I was unable to get a good charge with my solar charger that I usually did outside. The last chatter I heard was Washington was completely flattened, and Russian forces were holding power in all the major metropolitan cities down the East Coast. United States military forces overseas, and that were spread out across the world, had retaliated against Russia and North Korea with nuclear strikes of their own. I could only hope those reinforcements would be making their way by land and sea to help defend us on our own soil. We had all heard that North Korea initiated this by launching the first EMPs, and the Russians followed up by dropping a nuke on us, and were now invading. I hadn't heard anything about China, but I knew they were both North Korea and Russia's biggest ally. 11 days ago, before this started, we had all heard the chatter that if the United States ever got into war with Russia and China, we'd be in big trouble. I just never expected an EMP would be what caused World War III to jump off. 11 days later, and the smell of funk from not bathing had overrun the house with sealed up windows. The pool water that we once used to bathe had turned a fluorescent green color. The water bob in the tub was nearly empty, and we hadn't been able to get outside to wash clothes. The days and nights had been relatively quiet. I'd see the occasional pack of now wild dogs roaming the street, but no people. The EMP was detonated during the middle of the afternoon, local time that fateful day, when most people were at work. If you weren't fortunate enough to be home, retired, or work within a short distance, chances are you never made it home. My neighborhood consisted of 2 streets that made a big loop. An estimated 60 to 70% of the homes now sat vacant. Today, 11 days later, I made the decision that if any nuclear fallout had by some chance reached us, it would have now passed, and we could open some windows and get back to being outside. I needed to charge the ham radio, the walkies, and shock the living hell out of the pool water so we could begin using it to bathe again. We had maybe 5 gallons left in the water bob, but I still had over 150 gallons of untouched water in the basement. The sole purpose of that water was for drinking consumption only. I had 7 5-gallon buckets I would divert rainwater from the gutters of my house into Net's vacant house into now. We still had plenty of food stored up as well. It wasn't until 2 days ago we had to finally dip into my stored food preps. You know, watching my daughters kick a soccer ball in the backyard brought me back to a sense of normalcy before the shit hit the fan. With so much happening, you forget how much something like this changes their lives. My kids were full of innocence. Yeah, they knew Dad liked to store up food and water, but I never once pushed that lifestyle on them. I did it because looking at my kids starving to death, withering away to nothing, would be the worst thing in the world to witness. As the kids played and I cleaned the pool, we even got to enjoy some music I had downloaded on this old phone. Man, it had been 3 weeks since we'd heard any. It's the little things like this you miss. My kids weren't big fans of my 90s R&B and hip-hop collection, but it was better than the complete quietness that had filled each passing day and night. Those previous 11 days and nights we spent playing board games after board game after board game after board game. A game of Monopoly could easily help pass 4 to 5 hours. When you're confined to the inside of your house 24 hours a day for 11 straight days, time seems to drag. The arms of the clock seemed to stand still in time. We had relocated the furniture in the master bedroom and set up air mattresses so the children and my wife could share the same room. The kids found comfort sleeping in the same room as Mom. I spent most nights pacing back and forth between different windows, watching for any trouble at night. I'd catch a couple naps during the day to try and catch up on sleep. Without Jack and Eddie around, I was back to pulling night watch all by myself again. Thankfully, things have been quiet, but who knew how long that would last? During the day, you'd hear an occasional jet fly over and begin to pray it wasn't about to drop a bomb on our neighborhood. From the intel I had gathered, the big cities were the ones needing to worry. Anything that was left in the gardens, we didn't chance eating now. My wife had washed clothes in the hot tub. The pool was already looking better, but with no filter, I'd have to go out a few times an hour and stir it up. Even if it was just for the moment, things felt good, with one exception, that being my nicotine habit. I'd regulated myself to no more than half a pack a day. At that current rate, I'd be running out of smokes in 3 to 4 days, damn it. Do I dare go out scavenging for smokes again? I still remember what happened on day 1. At some point in time, we're going to have to make a decision to stay here or bug out. I had a good 6 to 9 months of prep stored up, and I'd hate to leave it all behind. Where would we go? How would we get there? These were both questions I didn't have answers for. With darkness fast approaching, I decided to go to Eddie's house and gather up the remaining supplies he had there before someone else stumbled across them. Like I had promised, I woke up each morning, looked at Eddie's final resting place with a makeshift cross marking the spot. 11 days ago, we had gathered up Jack's supplies to bring to Eddie's. Between what we had combined together, I'd be able to gather a few more weeks of food and water. Not that we needed it immediately, it would be a nice addition. What I had wouldn't last forever. Grabbed my chest rig, my rifle, across the street, stopping to talk with Eddie for a moment. The wheelbarrow from Jack's was still in the garage, filled with food and water. I slowly and carefully entered Eddie's house. I grabbed the remaining shotgun shells that were laying on the counter, went through the cupboards, scored some canned foods, pasta, and the remaining case of bottled water he had. I added it to the other supplies in the wheelbarrow. That moment, I looked up onto the wall. It was a picture of Eddie and his family. His ex-wife and 2 daughters joined him in it. If they were still out there alive somewhere, they'd have no idea the suffering he endured before he died. Again, that made me think of my family. Was everyone still alive? Had anyone been killed? Died off? It was horrible not knowing. And even worse, probably never being able to find out. I regretted not spending more time with my father when I had the chance. Part of me wanted to venture the 10 to 12 miles to his house and find out. The other part of me knew I could never leave my wife and kids for 2+ days to make the journey. Before all the shit went down with the marauders, I'd planned to do a neighborhood check. That was going to be on tomorrow's agenda. There was power in numbers, and if I was lucky, I might find some help. At the very least, I would come across valuable resources. I wheeled the supplies across the street, said goodnight to Eddie. I brought the food, water, the other supplies in through the back door of my garage. My wife had made spaghetti and sauce on the Coleman cooktop. Man, if I only had some garlic bread, life would be good. She handed me a plate to eat before I started night watch. It felt phenomenal to get back outside after 11 days. The kids played, the pool was cleaned, clothes were washed, and I gathered up extra supplies from Eddie's. I only hope tonight's watch and tomorrow's neighborhood recon mission would go just as smooth.